Welcome back. This is lesson 2.2 journal. We are comparing and ordering fractions and decimals. So here it says, you will be able to compare fractions and decimals. I will also be able to correctly put fractions and decimals in order. Go ahead and fill in those blanks. Okay, some vocabulary for this lesson. It's the same vocabulary we discussed for the last lesson. Place value is how much each place value is worth, each digit. A fraction is parts out of a whole unit. The numerator is the top number on a fraction. Denominator is the bottom number on a fraction. Equivalent fractions are equal to each other in value, but have different numerators and denominators. A common denominator means that they both have the same number as a denominator. Unit fraction is a fraction that has 1 in its numerator. Improper fractions is when the top is bigger than the bottom, so the numerator is larger than the denominator. And a mixed number is when you have a whole number and a fraction put together. All right, so comparing fractions. When comparing common denominators. First. So, if we're comparing all fractions, we want our denominators to be the same, so that way we can know which one really is bigger or smaller. So looking at these, the least common denominator is the same thing as the least common multiple. So if I want to find the least common multiple of 20, 4, and 8, I can do my ladder if I want to. For time though, I'm just going to start counting through 20s and see if 4 and 8 will go to it. So 4 can go into 20, so those would be a common denominator if I turned them all to 20, but 8 won't go into 20. So 40 would be the next one. 4 can go into 40, and 8 can go into 40. So I'm going to turn these all into something over 40. So I have a common denominator. Now I just need to take and multiply these so they become over 40. So 20, in order to turn 20 into 40, that means I need to times it by 2. But remember, what you do to the bottom of a fraction, you have to do the top as well. So you keep them, so you're making an equivalent fraction. So 2 times 20 is 40. So 17 times 2. So 17/20 is the same as 34 over 40. Okay, to turn 4 into 40, I'm going to have to multiply that by 10. So I'm going to times the top by 10 as well. So 4 times 10 is 40. So 3 times 10 would be 30. So that would be the same as 30 out of 40 pieces. 7/8, I'm going to times 8 by 5 to make 40. So if I times the bottom by 5, I have to times the top by 5. And that would make this 35. Now this, my instructions say to organize each set of fractions in order from least to greatest. So now that I have these all over 40, which of these fractions is the smallest? Well, 30 is smaller than 34 or 35, so that means that 3/4 is going to be my smallest of these fractions. We always write the original form we got, that way we know that we're putting them in the right order. So 3/4 was first. I've used it up. Which of these is next smallest? Well, 34 pieces is smaller than 35 pieces. So that was 17 over 20. And then that leaves us 35 over 40, which was 7/8. So 7/8 is the biggest of these fractions. But looking at them the way they were, I couldn't tell you which one was bigger or which one was smaller. So that's why we got a common denominator. Okay, let's do the same thing here. Well, first things first, since these are mixed numbers, this one's really easy to tell which one is the smallest and the biggest if I look at the whole numbers.
For now, I have 1 and 9/10. That's less than 2. Well, this is 2 whole units, and this is 2. I know that 1 and 9/10 has to be smallest because 1 whole unit is smaller than 2 whole units. So that means I don't have to find a common denominator with that one. But these ones are too close for me to tell. So I want a common denominator with 15 and 3. Well, I can turn 3 into 15. So if I multiply this by 5, I can multiply this one by 5. That would make that one 2 and 5/15. And this one's already got 15 on the bottom. So that means that 2 and 2/15 is smaller than 2 and 5/15. So that means that 2 and 1/3 is the largest fraction here. All right, so that's how we can compare fractions. Now it says comparing decimals. Hint, when comparing decimals, compare the largest place values first. Okay, a hint for that is to start on the left. Okay, in a decimal number, whatever number is on the left is the highest place value you have. So we're going to organize each set of decimals in order from least to from greatest to least. Also make sure you read your instructions here. So one thing that makes it easier for me is if I line up the decimals. So if I line up the decimal 4, 5, 0.045, 0.4.5. By lining up the decimals, I can easily compare place values. Now anywhere I have nothing, I'm just going to fill those in with zeros because there is 0 in the hundreds place here, there's 0 in the thousands place, but it makes it easier for me to see what place values I'm comparing. So in this first one, starting on the left, because this is the largest place value, so 0, 0, 0, and 4, which one has to be the largest? This is 4 whole units, and these have 0 whole units. So 4.5 has to be the largest number. So I'm going greatest to least. So I like to put a little 1 by it and cross it off so I'm not looking at it anymore. Alright, these are all zeros, so now I'm going to the next one. Here I have 4, 0, and 4. I have 4 tenths, 0 tenths, and 4 tenths. So the 4 tenths are going to be equal to each other, so I'm going to go to the next place value. Here I have 5 hundredths. Here I have 0 hundredths. So if I'm looking for the next largest one, 5 is larger than 0. So that means that 0.45 or 45 hundredths is the next largest number. So that was number 2. I cross it off so I'm not looking at it anymore. Okay, comparing what's left. 0 and 4. 4 is larger than 0. So that would give me 0 and 4 tenths. And that would make 45 thousandths the smallest. So 0.045. So in order from greatest to least, there we go. All right, same idea over here. Line up the decimals makes it much easier to compare. So I'm going to line up 2.66, 3.2, 3.0, 2.606. Okay, I'm going to annex some zeros just so I have something in every place value. All right, if I'm going greatest to least, here I have 2 holes, 3 holes, 3 holes, and 2 holes. That means the 3 holes are going to be the largest. So 3 whole units, so move to the next place value. Here I have 2 tenths. Here I have 0 tenths. 2 is larger than 0. So this would be my largest number. So 3.2 would be largest. So I'm going to cross that off so I'm not looking at it anymore. Okay, 3 whole units is larger than 2 whole units, so that would make this the second largest. Now I'm comparing these two that are left. So 2 whole units, that's the same. 6 tenths, that's the same. 6 hundredths, 0 hundredths. 6 hundredths is larger than 0 hundredths since we're going greatest to least. That would make this one the next largest. So I'm going to put 2.66. And then the last one would be 2 and 606 thousandths. All right, now what about if we're comparing fractions and decimals? When comparing numbers, it is important to make them all the same format. Meaning, make them all decimals or make them all fractions. You learned yesterday how to turn them into fractions to decimals or decimals to fractions, but I'm going to be honest with you, I think it is so much easier to turn all fractions into decimals. It's easier to compare them. If not, you have to turn them into fractions, then you have to find common denominators. So to me, I like to make all my numbers decimals to begin with. So let's read this problem. It says, Michael mined 2 3/4 ounces of gold. Kendra mined 2 56 hundredths ounces. Nicole mined 2 705 thousandths ounces. Trey mined 3.5 ounces. Ahmad mined. Put the names in order from least to greatest of who mined the most gold. Okay, so we have Michael with 2 3/4. We have Kendra with 2.56. We have Nicole with 2.705. We have Trey with 3 1/2. And we have Ahmad with 2 5/8. Okay, we want the names from least to greatest. There's one here that should be standing out to you. Trey has to be the largest because he has 3 whole ounces where the rest only have 2. So without having to do any more math, I know that Trey has to be the last name on my list. So I'm going to put him as largest. With that, I'm going to turn my fractions now into decimals so that I can compare them. So remember from yesterday how we can turn fractions into decimals by dividing. So 3/4, 2 3/4 is going to be 2 point something. So I'm going to do 3 divide by 4. It goes into 3 0 times. But I know that there's going to be 2 whole units there. So I just know it's going to be a 2 point something. So 4 goes into 3 0 times. So I'm going to annex this decimal and a 0. 4 goes into 30 7 times. 7 times 4 is 28. Minus that, I get 2, so I'm going to annex another 0. 4 goes into 20 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20. So, turning this into a decimal, I have 2 whole units, so 2 before the decimal. Here's my decimal portion. So that's the same as 2.75. Okay, this last one, 5/8. I'm going to put 5 inside the box. 8 on the outside. 8 goes into 5 0 times. Annex a decimal and a 0. 8 goes into 50 6 times. 6 times 8 is 48. Leaves me with 2. Annex a 0. Bring it down. 8 goes into 20 2 times 8 is 16. That leaves me with 4, and x is 0, bring it down. 8 goes into 40 5 times. Minus 40 gives me 0. Okay, so we have, this is equal to 2 and 625 thousandths. So now I have decimals to compare all the ones with a 2. So I'm going to look, since they're all 2, I'm now going to look at the hundredths place. Lining up the decimal helps, or you can just make sure that you're looking at the right place value. So now I'm looking at the tenths place. So for the smallest one, I have a 7, a 5, a 7, and a 6. That means 5 is going to be smallest. Kendra found the least amount of gold. So I'm going to put Kendra as least. And I'm going to cross her off just so I'm not looking at her or Trey. So we got the smallest and the biggest. Now looking at what's left. 7, 7, 6. That means Ahmad was next. So use number 2. So now between Nicole and Michael, they have a 7 in the tenths place. So now I look at the hundredths place. 5 and 0. 5 is larger than 0. So that means Nicole was third. And that leaves Michael in the last spot that we haven't filled in, so spot number 4. Okay, but you can see how turning the fractions into decimals, it was easy to compare all of them. So they just have to be all in the same format before you make those kind of comparisons. Okay, rate yourself on this concept. Are you a 0, 1, 2, 3, or 4? Circle it. Take a picture and turn it in on your math menu.